Here are detailed steps to install Docker on Windows, macOS, and Linux. Windows.
Requirements.
Windows 10 64-bit, Pro, Enterprise, or Education. Home Edition doesn't support Docker natively. Hyper-V must be enabled. Most modern Windows 10 installations have this by default. Virtualization must be enabled in the BIOS, UEFI settings. Installation steps. Download the Docker desktop for Windows installer from the Docker Hub. You can find it at this URL: https://hub.docker.com/edition/community/docker-ce desktop Windows. Run the installer and follow the installation wizard. During the installation, you might be asked to enable Hyper-V and containers features. Allow the installer to make these changes. Once the installation is complete, Docker Desktop will be running, and you'll see a whale icon in the system tray. Docker is now installed on your Windows machine. You can open a command prompt or PowerShell window and run Docker version to verify that Docker is installed correctly.
macOS. Requirements.
macOS 10.13 or newer. Installation steps. Download the Docker Desktop for Mac installer from the Docker Hub. You can find it at this URL: https://hub.docker.com/edition/community/docker-ce desktop Mac. Double-click the downloaded .dmg file to open it. Drag the Docker icon into the Applications folder. Open Docker from your Applications folder. The first time you run Docker, you'll be prompted to allow it to make changes to your system. Click Open to grant permission. Docker will start, and you'll see a whale icon in the macOS menu bar. Docker is now installed on your Mac. You can open a terminal and run Docker version to verify that Docker is installed correctly. Linux, Ubuntu example.
Requirements.
A 64-bit installation of Ubuntu with a version that Docker officially supports. Installation steps. Update the package index on your system. Sudo apt-get update. Install required packages to allow apt to use a repository over HTTPS. Sudo apt-get install y apt transport HTTPS certificates curl software properties common. Add Docker's official GPG key. Curl fssl https://download.docker.com/linux/ubuntu/gpg. Sudo gpg dirmor o usr share keyrings docker archive keyring.gpg. Add the Docker repository to your system. Echo deb arch equals amd64 signed by equals usr share keyrings docker archive keyring.gpg. https://download.docker.com/linux/ubuntu $lsb_release cs stable sudo t etc. apt/sources.list d docker list greater than dev null. Update the package index again. Sudo apt-get update. Install Docker. Sudo apt-get install y docker-ce docker-ce cli container.io. Start the Docker service and enable it to start on boot. Sudo systemctl start Docker. Sudo systemctl enable Docker. Verify that Docker is installed correctly by running Docker version. That's it. You now have Docker installed on your Linux system. You can start using Docker containers. Please note that the specific steps may vary slightly depending on your Linux distribution. Be sure to check the Docker documentation for your specific distribution for any additional instructions.